Welcome. We are moving on to Chapter 8 now of The Art of War. I wanted to take just a little time to situate Chapter 8 by looking back at Chapters 6 and 7. So in Chapter 6, we discussed that there's this element of a personal note and a false confidence that seems to give us a little bit more of a notion of a historical Sun Tzu. He says he can win the war. Historically, we know that he did not win the war, and so there seems to be evidence, at least, of a text, of a statement that was left in there by the author that dates the text. Excuse me. Also within Chapter 6, he gives us the dirty little secret that war must be lowly, that it's not going to be necessarily a virtuous or high thing. Going on to Chapter 7, he makes a partial break with the structure. I argued that there's evidence of later editors or redactors, so for example quoting the military primer, and also this use of axioms, a new sort of genre, a new way of speaking. Also within Chapter 7, Sun Tzu tells us that the art of war is the art of deception. This is sort of a key of that chapter. And then the conclusion of the chapter says this is the art of war. So we have this idea of a sense of closure following Chapter 7 before we begin with Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is riddled with a few problems, and you can look at the commentary there for some evidence of this. One thing is the problem that it starts off with material from an earlier chapter. So our translators suggest that this material was brought in from Chapter 7 just to sort of beef up Chapter 8 because it's a short chapter. There are others who have other sorts of problems with it. I'm not going to go too much into that. We will spend less time with Chapter 8 than we have with some of the previous chapters, but again, this does provide you a lot of material for your assignment coming up, because the focus of Chapter 8 has so much to do with the warlike mentality, with the warlike mentality of the general, and how it is that the generals also have to be aware of this tendency within themselves. A major stress of this chapter is on what not to do. It gives the impression that the general is dominated by yang sort of energy, and that's in some sense what makes him a good general. But too much yang is going to be no benefit to him at all. And Sun Tzu seems to be saying that this impulse, the yang impulse, has to be checked as well. The drive forward, the drive to do, to accomplish, this sort of fullness can definitely be to one's detriment as well as to one's benefit. So if we just jump in here for a second, he writes, on intractable terrain, do not encamp. On crossroad terrain, join forces with allies. On dire terrain, do not linger. On enclosed terrain, make strategic plans. On death terrain, do battle. There are roads not to take. There are enemies not to attack. There are towns not to besiege. There are terrains not to contest. So although previously Sun Tzu's made the point of what certain terrains have to offer, here he's making the point over and over again that you might not want to go forward in certain sorts of conditions. It would be unwise to do that. If you don't have the earth on your side, then you will not win. This is a point that he's going to make a few different times. Just to note, again, here he makes this statement, there are rulers not to obey. So I said earlier that if this is sort of a cover letter, if we consider it, for Sun Tzu, this would be a unwise statement to make. Although he could be letting this whoever would be employing him to be the general know, I'm the kind of guy who's going to get the war done, and you should just let me do it. Let me do my job. Moving on to what I was discussing about the general needing to temper his yang, to lessen his yang at times. Beginning with where he writes, the wise leader in his deliberations always blends consideration of gain and harm. So these are both going to be present, and he has to deal with both of these. What potential harm could come about from the gains and vice versa. By tempering thoughts of gain, he can accomplish the goal. By tempering thoughts of harm, he can extricate himself from calamity. And so a point here is that too much lust for gain can be a detriment. If a general is not able to say no because all of the elements aren't in his favor, then this can lead him to lose. If he has the bird in his grasp and it's not yet time for him to cinch it, and he goes ahead and does it, then he's not working in accord with the Tao. He's not doing what he should do. All the elements aren't coming together as one, and Sun Tzu is going to say, and he cannot win. Finally, I want to move to what he calls the 5 pitfalls for a general. These are recklessness leading to destruction, cowardice leading to capture, a hot temper prone to provocation, a delicacy of honor tending to shame, a concern for his men leading to trouble. These 5 excesses in a general are the bane of war. So you can give yourself a little exercise here. So think about, we'll take the first example of recklessness. So courage is a good thing. We consider courage a young sort of principle. But too much courage leads to recklessness, having no fear at all, not being able to take the time to consider a situation because you're just going straight ahead. Sometimes that's the way these are going to work. Too much yang is going to be a bad thing. But there are other sorts of ways that these 2 principles are going to be operating, these principles of opposing extremes. So I would like you to just take a look through and think about this in terms of cowardice and a hot temper, a delicacy of honor, or having thin skin, we could say, and being concerned for your men. How are all of these traits, which are actually good traits in some ways, how are they potentially going to be harmful for a general?